Welcome to the second part of the Dark Souls trilogy, Daggers Only. Last video, I took on the challenge of Dark Souls 3, and I only died a total of 77 times. I know, that's a lot of deaths. That's why I'm here today to redeem myself in Dark Souls 2. So in this video, you're gonna see a man work the shaft of a dagger the best you've never seen. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video. I named my character Giant King Lee in honor of JK Lead since he commented on my last video. Then I choose the Explorer class and make my way to Majula. Once in Majula, I make sure to light the bonfire before making my way to the forest. As the cutscene for our first boss, the last giant, was rolling out, I couldn't shake the feeling that I forgot something. Oh yeah, I forgot to grab my Estus. Whatever, shouldn't be a problem. The last giant is an easy boss as usual, as long as you throw away your fetish of getting stepped on and dodge away from his stomping feet. I couldn't stay away from those big gorgeous feet, so I had to get stepped on at least once. And just like that, the last giant is now the lost giant. After beating the last giant, I decided to go play Mario Kart with the Dragon Rider. In the pursuer fight, I decided to use the ballista because arrows are basically daggers, right? But I was still able to finish him off with the gentle tip of my dagger. Back in Majula, I kept pumping levels into ADP as well as vigor and endurance. After leveling up, I figured it was the perfect time to finally consume some souls and upgrade my dagger. The Ruined Sentinels was a very long fight that came close a few too many times, but I ended up pulling off the win on my first attempt. After the Ruined Sentinels fight, I bought a fragrant branch of yore and headed towards the Shaded Woods. While in the Shaded Woods, I made sure to grab the Chloranthy Ring +1 and made my way towards the bonfire. In the Scorpioness Najka fight, I could not for the life of me remember how to get up onto her tail, so I just had to fight her the normal way. For the most part, this fight was easy. It was just annoying having to deal with the attack where she burrows underground and jumps back up at you, as well as having to deal with her magic attacks. They were a little annoying to dodge for me. I ended up dying once, but on my second attempt, I pulled off the win. Next, I made my way to No Man's Wharf so I could take down the Flexile Sentry boss. They were as easy as usual, just attack them whenever you can and try not to let the water rise too much. Whenever I start enjoying this game, I'm always reminded of how it can be annoying at times. Going into the Lost Sinner fight, I was a little nervous for this one because I had remembered it being a lot harder than what it really was. On my first attempt, I could have won, but the man in my closet distracted me for a split second at the end, so I ended up dying. But on my second attempt, I ended up redeeming myself and taking home another victory. And there is our first Great Soul. After running through the entirety of Huntsman Corpse, I make my way to the Skeleton Lord's fight. First, I take out the one in the middle to spawn in the bone wheels, which I can quickly get rid of. Killing the second Skeleton Lord spawns a few skeletons with armor as well as swords. After killing all of those skeletons, I finish the final lord, spawning the last wave of skeletons I have to kill. Why did these skeletons want to fight me? I don't know. I guess they just had a bone to pick with me. After sending all those skeletons to an early grave, I decided to take on the Royal Rat Vanguard. I died to this boss once, but other than that, it was a pretty easy fight. Alright, whatever, I didn't want to kill him anyway. Oh, fuck off. After all those shenanigans, we finally make our way to the next boss, Jabba the Pizza Hut. Do I really need to say anything about this boss other than the fact that I killed him? Moving on. I head on back to Majula and throw some levels into Vigor and Endurance. After dying to those headless assholes too many times to count, I finally set light to the windmill. With the windmill out of the way, I make my way to the Mytha fight. She tried to give me some head, but blew me instead. The second attempt ended just as fast as the first. And I guess you could say, third time's the charm. The Rotten was surprisingly tough for me. I think I ended up dying around 5 or so times. On my winning run, my strategy was to stay right in front of the Rotten so that I could see and dodge all of his attacks and follow it up with R1 spam. After beating the Rotten, I finally decided to try and get another dagger so I could try out the power stance. Now with my new shiny dagger in my hand, I decided to take on the Royal Rat Authority. Dealing with the little rat dogs is annoying, but after they're dead, this boss becomes a joke. Good thing I killed them before I could find out what all that puke was. The prowling Magnus Carlsen was not much of a challenge. Grandmaster for what, buddy? People who have pet spiders are just weird. The Smelter Demon wasn't too bad. I actually ended up dying more times to the run back rather than the boss himself, which really pissed me off because now I'm past 77 total deaths, meaning I can't do better than my Dark Souls 3 run. The Smelter Demon fight really made me feel like Nelly Furtado the way I put his flames to dust. After the Smelter Demon, I fight this Pursuer in his arena to get the Ring of Blades +1. I decided to use the bonfire aesthetic for the Rotten fight so that I could fight him again and get a ton of souls to level up. With all those souls, I put 4 levels into Vigor and Endurance as well as 1 level into Dexterity. So far in this run, I feel that the daggers have been a little underwhelming, so I thought I should go out and try getting a different dagger. So I headed back to the Huntsman corpse and found the bandit's knife sitting on a body next to a big hole. After grabbing the bandit's knife, I also thought that I should head back to the Things Betwixt and go get the stone ring. I forgot to record it, but I also infused the bandit's knife with bleed. As I get further into this game, I'm becoming more aware that these daggers just suck ass. I mean, look at this damage against Old Iron King. For this fight, I was using a +7 bandit's knife, which was my highest dealing weapon at the time. After dying to this boss twice, I decided to channel my inner prod and ended up beating him on my first try. After defeating Old Iron King, I now had all 4 Great Souls, which meant I had access to Drangleic Castle, which leads us to our next boss, the Dragon Rider duo. I unironically struggled with this boss fight until I realized that the Dragon Rider that starts with the bow is actually easier to kill than the first one. Before I knew that little piece of information, my whole strategy was to try and kill the one in red first, then go for the one in black. But after dying a few times, I ended up getting pissed off and I was just like, ah, fuck it, I'll fight the other one. And then I did a big chunk of damage, so I was like, oh, okay. And just like that, I slay a couple of dragons. Welcome to my personal hell. This boss broke me. This boss isn't even that hard, it's just really annoying to have to deal with him constantly spawning NPCs into the fight, as well as me having very low damage since the daggers in this game just suck. This caused the fight to be very long every attempt, and he would just constantly re-summon NPCs, which would make the fight even longer. After dying to him a few times, I eventually smartened up and decided to infuse one of my daggers with Dark since he's weak to it, but even after doing that, the damage was still very low. Eventually, I decided to lock in and turn off the YouTube I was watching as well as turn the game volume up so that I could focus more on the actual game. And thankfully, that was all I needed to pull off the win, because my first attempt after doing that, I ended up beating him. With the Looking Glass Knight finally dead, I now have access to my next dagger that I hope is a lot better than the previous ones, the Black Flamestone Dagger. Before taking on the Demon of Song, I decided to get a couple of optional bosses out of the way, as well as get a few levels. Similar to his Dark Souls 1 counterpart, he's not much of a challenge to take down. And with our new dagger, we're finally able to dish out some decent damage. After killing the old Dragon Slayer, I realized that old people are just young people who have been alive for a very long time. The next boss up on the chop block is the Belfry Gargoyles. While this boss is fairly easy, it's also fairly annoying having to deal with all the gargoyles that spawn during this fight. This fight could have been a lot more enjoyable if instead of fighting 6 gargoyles, maybe you only have to fight 1 or 2. After a short and not so sweet fight, I bell-fried the gargoyles. Moving back to the main progression of the game, our next boss up is the Demon of Song. I think when I fought this boss, I was just having a really bad day, because I cannot explain to you how I kept messing up this fight. I would go in, get 1 hit, and then die immediately after. I can't even brag about this boss being easy, which it is, because I ended up dying 6 times to this boss. My strategy for this fight was to take an 8-hour-long nap between the hours of 11 PM and 8 AM, and then beat this boss on my first try when I wake up. I can't remember if this strategy worked because my memory is pretty ass, but I do know that I ended up beating this boss. The next boss up on the list is Velstadt the Royal Anus. Velstadt has the potential to one-shot me with a few of his attacks, so all I need to do is dodge his very well choreographed attacks. Surely that won't be a problem for me. Yeah, I don't know how I can be this bad either. Just wait till you see how many times I died by the end of the game. Now for the attempt where I decided to stop goofing around. Since this guy has a pretty hefty cooldown for missing an attack, you can take advantage of this time and get plenty of hits in before needing to dodge another one. But even then, the damage against this guy is pretty low, so you better buckle up for a long fight. After obtaining the King's Ring, we move on to our next fight, the Guardian Dragon. After doing multiple playthroughs of Elden Ring, any dragon fight to me is pretty much just a walk in the park. So of course I beat this boss on my first try, which really makes up for me dying to all the other easy boss fights. After defeating the Guardian Dragon, I run up to the Ancient Dragon, spam the talk button, and grab myself the Ashen Mist Heart. And before taking on this fight, I decided to get all the other giant souls first. I quickly run through the memory of Vamar to get the first soul of a giant. Then I get the soul from the memory of Oro. Next up is the memory of Jay, which also has the next fight on our list, the Giant Lord. Not much to say about the Giant Lord. It's the exact same fight as the last giant, except this time he has a big sword. Ooh. And there's our next giant soul. While I'm back at Majula, I finally decide to upgrade my Black Flamestone Dagger to +10. Of course, the best way to beat Ancient Dragon is standing between his toes. Miyazaki just can't get enough of these feet, man. Since we're on the topic of feet, I got a little bit of a fun fact to tell you. Back in June, I was helping my dad carry some tools out of a trailer, and one of the tools that I decided to take out was a concrete floor saw, which if you do not know, weighs about 160 pounds. And me being confident, decided to grab it myself to carry it out of the trailer. I didn't have too much trouble lifting it, because you know, I'm strong. But I did have a little trouble lowering it to the ground. So instead of bending over and slowly lowering it down, I decided that I would drop it. And after I ended up dropping it, I quickly found out that I did not move my left foot far enough away, and I ended up dropping it right on my big toe. It hurt like a bitch for maybe 30 or so minutes, but after that, it doesn't hurt too bad. However, my toenail is now black and falling off, so I gotta deal with that. If anyone wants a picture, you know, hit me up, I'll hand it out for free. Anyway, with that little story out of the way, that's the Ancient Dragon defeated. Get it? Vendrick is the most boring boss fight in this game, so I'm not going to talk about it. Before I get into the final 3 boss fights of the game, I'm going to address the elephant in the room. No, I did not do the DLC. However, I plan on making a part 2 to this challenge, where I do all of the DLC. The only reason I'm doing this is because I need to take a little break away from Dark Souls 2. Although I do really like this game, it does piss me off more than any other Souls game So to keep myself from smashing my controller on my desk as hard as I can, I'm just going to take a little bit time away, do a Dark Souls 1 challenge, maybe a Demon Souls challenge, then I'll get back to Dark Souls 2. Now back to the Throne Watcher and Throne Defender. Oh, they're dead? Nice. Now on to the next boss, which is Nashandra. Nashandra isn't too hard to beat, however, it is pretty annoying dealing with the constant curse buildup that you get when near her. But other than that, her attacks are pretty easy to dodge since it takes a whole minute for anything to actually get to you. The whole challenge of this boss fight just comes to trying to get close to her so you can do any damage. So with more than enough patience, Nashandra is now Nashanded. Now for the final boss of the game, which is also the most disappointing of the three. The whole gimmick of this boss fight is that Aldia has a fire barrier around him, so you can't do any damage up close. So again, this boss is another fight of patience. All you have to do is wait for it to do a few certain attacks where it lowers its fire barrier so you can run up and get some damage in. So while this boss rolls out, I'd like to take some time to look over how this run went. My main goal of this run was to do better than I did in the Dark Souls 3 run. In Dark Souls 3, I had 77 deaths and around 9 hours playtime. In Dark Souls 2, I died a total of 138 times, as well as a playthrough of 13 hours, 37 minutes, and 58 seconds. So I guess you could say I did a little worse than my Dark Souls 3 run. The next video I'm working on is a Dark Souls 1 dagger only run. For that one, I'm hoping to do better than Dark Souls 2, and hopefully better than Dark Souls 3. So if you're looking forward to seeing that video, if you could subscribe and ring the bell, you'll be notified as soon as it goes up. And before I end this video, I would like to present you all with a question. What is your favorite Soulsborne game and why? I would love to know what your opinion is down in the comments below. If you want to see more of my Dark Souls content, I have a Dark Souls 3 video out that I'll link in the end screen. And with all that being said, good morning, good night, and goodbye.